Hello, welcome back to dev.log, and this week's episode I'll be covering update to the series, the current roadmap, developing homepage layout, adding shadcn UI, design updates, and program updates. So getting right into it, this series is going to make a slight change to its format. I'll go over why I've decided to go through these changes, but I first want to discuss what I was doing before and what I'm planning to do now. So the old way of doing it was me recording myself working. It would just be a screen cap of me working hours long. And then I would make a script later on in the week, record a voiceover for it, edit, and then upload it. The new way I want to make these videos is by recording less of me working or nothing at all of me working, making bullet points and a presentation, record and go over everything, edit, and then upload. Now, why the reasons for the changes? First off is storage on my PC. Recording hours on end of me working takes gigabytes upon gigabytes to my storage, and over time it's not feasible in the sense of me having to always go through and delete stuff, as well as half the time I don't ever use or a good chunk of that footage. Getting that out of the way helps. Also, recording myself while I work kind of feels like I'm being watched in a way, or I have someone over my shoulder watching me, and it just didn't feel conducive of me learning and trying to just build out stuff and make those mistakes and failures that I will, and I'll talk about my mistakes and failures, but just having that all captured or be feeling like watched just wasn't really working for me. As well as the new way of doing things will help save on time, like being able to just make a presentation, record it, edit it. Now, as the way we are, should hopefully cut down in a day because I don't have to do any of the special effects afterwards. I can just do them all in the presentation themselves, like the transitions as you've seen, or any other little animation or effects I want to. And that will also make the video much more engaging. That is, of course, the next point, is trying to make it more engaging rather than you just seeing a time lapse of me working or trying to show off what I'm talking about, or having me be able to get down to the gritty of explaining what I'm doing. And then it just leads to less editing work for me in the long run. It's just more of me just chopping up the video and removing all the little goofs and gaffs of me saying, whatever. Hopefully it will help, and it'll help me work more on the project and focus on that than trying to make these videos. Though I really want to make this vlog and show the process of me building this app, even just for myself. So the roadmap so far has been creating the repos and testing them, as well as Docker setup, and then developing the homepage and intro to Next.js. First two in this roadmap are the first episodes of dev.log. This developing homepage and the Next.js stuff is what I worked on this week and what I'm working on this next week and possibly a third week. Hopefully not. It should be done by this next week. That is what I'm working on so far. Developing the homepage is a way for me to learn Next.js rather than having to get so involved with everything else and the bigger, heavier stuff. It's just a way for me to, again, dip my feet into the water, as well as understanding Tailwind CSS. So looking ahead, after I get the homepage set up, I'm going to be working on users and authentication. So being able to get a user set up and their account set up. Parts of the user and tied to other things will get developed later on, but at least being able to log in or sign up is the goal for that. Down the line, of course, getting to Everway version 1. That down the line part hasn't been figured out yet, the parts in between. So that will get later developed through the series, and I'll talk about more when, again, I get further. That is what is to look ahead on. So starting off with this week's work was designing out a rough layout of the home/landing page. As you can see here, I have a little bit of info talking about the page. It's more for myself, and then I have the mock-up. So far, I'm mostly just working on the nav bar. The main content will get developed out later. It's just there to note that That's where the main content, of course, will be. I'll have the logo and title, services, a login and setup button. The services, to go into more of that, will be the different parts of planning the trip. It'll just discuss what you can basically be able to do in the app, and that will all be linked into the main content of the page. Now, the next part that I worked on is actually adding shadcn UI, which is a UI library, as you can see, with different components that are already there that you can work and build out on and use to make different parts of your app. And this is just showing you an example of what you can do with shadcn UI. It has been really easy to use, just being able to select which component I want to use, be able to add it, copy the code, make the modifications I need to, and then it's right there and in. Taking me a little bit to understand and set up and get working, but once I did, it has been really easy and been really nice to use. It allows me not to have everything bloated up, or the project be bloated up with a full entire library. I can just choose the parts I want to use, add them in, and they're really easy and they look really nice. Moving on with the design updates, it's been mostly dealing with developing the logo. So this is one of the mock-ups I first made up that I felt like, oh, I can like export and use. And I thought it was really good, looks really good. But the problem that I ran into is when I made it smaller, you lost a lot of the details. It was close, but wasn't fully there for me. So that's where I went back to the drawing board and tried to test out and develop more things. And I slowly narrowed it down to the final version that you'll see. So trying to make it simpler and maybe a bit more sleek and adding a nice little centerpiece there. But then again, I still felt that there was maybe too much white or empty space. I made it a bit bigger, bolder, added more details back in, but made them a bit more distinct. So again, when shrinking down to a smaller size, you'll be able to see them still, or at least the general aspect of them. I was still trying to find the balance between the color and making sure each color has a good balance to each other. This is one of the hard parts of developing the logo / the palette design, is that I want to encapsulate the idea of being able to have all these different services and traveling and stuff. So that means kind of colorful. You're going to different places, seeing different things. So I feel like it should have been colorful. So that's why I'm going with this 4-color palette. But it's hard to balance out all those colors evenly and make sure that they match well with each other. The next slight iteration was changing out that green center and putting in a yellow, and that really helped at least balance out all the colors for the most part. Testing it when it was on a smaller size, it was kind of hard to differentiate between the green and the blue, so I needed to add a border to it. I tested this one. It was helping, but needed to be bolder and stand out more. So that is where I ended up with this. Then in use of it, I wanted to test out using the Tailwind CSS default colors that they had of their red, green, blue, and yellow. And this is what I ended up with. And I was liking it a lot more than what I was using before. The two main colors I really liked was the red and blue. Again, looking back, the blue was a bit too dark and the red was also a bit too bold. So this helped brighten and tone down and balance things out more. But the two colors I really wasn't liking was the green and yellow. The yellow was a little bit too dull for what I wanted to go for, and the green was a bit too light for what I wanted to go for. I wanted the green to be a bit bolder. So that's where I kind of found a hybrid approach of the green and yellow that I used before, adding them back in and keeping the blue and red. And that's the logo that we have here now, and I feel really settled on, that I really like. I feel like it encapsulates the kind of theme and meaning I'm going for. Now, moving on to the program updates. The current state of the homepage looks like this. Again, not a lot, and I've just primarily been working on the nav bar. As you can see, I set up the dark and light mode toggle button, and it was just chucked in there so I can test it. That's of course not going to be the final place for it. It will be put up in the nav bar. As well as with the nav bar, I set it up so that every time you refresh the page, the color will change to one of the colors in the palette. Again, it's just a fun way to show off the website. As well as I had to work on the fonts, and I did change it out for Source Sans font. You can find it on Google Fonts. I thought the typography I wanted to go for, but that's just a small update to that. Now I'm going to go dive into the homepage and how I built it out. As you can see here, I have two components, the nav home and the nav toggle for the theme. I just have it labeled as mode toggle because it's from shadcn and that's how it was labeled. This is what I have here. So diving into the nav home, it is also built out with right now two components, that being the nav title and the nav selection. The nav title is this here. It has the logo as well as the title. And now we have the nav selection, and the nav selection is getting plugged in with a nav component array. Again, that gets plugged into the nav selection that then builds out here all the different buttons. So if I added more to this list, it would then add test. Let's say if I added test 4 here, it would add test 4, test 5 with all different links, as well as having it linked to wherever it will go to. Right now I just have it as basically empty link. Later on I'd be able to switch it out, and all I have to do is switch it out here, and then it will get rebuilt out here perfectly normal in the way I want it to be. Now going into the nav title, it is built out with two parts to it, that being the logo and the other part being the title, and they're both wrapped in a link tag or component of Next.js that when you click on it on the website itself will link you back to just the home page. I'll be able to use this nav title in different parts of the website, so that's why I made it into its own separate component. This is where the logo is, and I will have an array of strings that will have all the different class names that will randomly be selected and set into the title. The array of strings get then plugged in to a function that will just get choose a random one out of it, and then that will then get set into the use state, and then that then gets plugged into a header and then gets added in, and then you see it here. Going into that, I made a utility file that for now just has a get random class function. So you'll be able to plug in a string, we'll have all different classes, and it'll just randomly select one and give back, again, one of the ones in the array. Now the reason for this is in other parts of the website, if I need to use it again, I have ability to use it, trying to block everything out and make things be reusable and easy to use. Going into the nav selection, in the file here, I set up a type for the nav component. So it's made up out of the link, which is a string, a title, which is a string, and a color, which is a string. The color is optional if I just want a certain component to have a blue text here. It could be blue or red or whatever color I want to plug in, but it's not needed. These two are needed to make the component be actually functional and linked to something. So then that gets plugged, again, exported, and I'm able then to use it again here in the nav home, where I can make the array of the nav component, and then that then gets plugged into the nav selection here, which is mapping out the array here, all the components. So if I add more components here to this array, it'll just get built out more and more, and I don't have to copy and paste the code or duplicate it. It just builds it out and adds all the things needed for it, so they're all even the same. Again, making sure the text is large and that has a padding on the X of 3 and padding on a Y of 3. So that's how that works. You come and see this here. Now moving on to the mode toggle, which is the theme toggle. It is built out of two parts. The main part being the drop down menu trigger, which is just a button with some icons, and when you click down you can select the theme. So when you select it, it will drop down this section where you can choose light, dark, or system being whatever theme that your browser is using. So if your browser is using dark theme, it will use the dark theme for the website. If your browser is using light theme, it will use light theme. Again, you'll be able to change it if you need to later, but that's the basic use of that. And then going more deeper into it, I changed out the icons that the default that you could get from shadcn using bootstrap icons, and I placed them into a icons folder that later on when I need more icons I can just plug them in, again easily add them into the project. Again, going back here just to show you, again right here there's the sun, and then you just plug in all the things you want to happen to it, and the moon. And again here, this is how it happens. So I have a type for the properties to get plugged in, so all the properties that need to be added get plugged in here, as well as the Everway logo that's plugged in here. But this one is using just the image that just imports the actual SVG file that I have, rather than making the SVG here. But that's the basic use of that. And overall, this has been dev.log. Thank you all for watching. If you liked the video, then leave a like, and if you want to see more content, feel free to subscribe.